Coming up on Network Africa. Nigerian Americans Esther Abaje and Oye Owolewa win big in the U.S. elections. Police arrest Ugandan opposition candidate Bobby Wine in the capital, Kampala. Plus, Malawi announces plan to open an embassy in Jerusalem. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. As the world awaits the final results of the U.S. presidential election, some Africans running for office in the United States have emerged winners. 9 Nigerians were in the race, and we know that 2 of them have so far won. They are Oye Owolewa and Esther Abaje.
9 Nigerian Americans are on the ballot for various elective offices in the U.S., and so far, only 2 of them have been announced winners in their elections. Oye Owolewa from Kwara State has won. He was running to represent Washington, D.C. District of Columbia. He won by 135,234 votes against his challenger, Robinson Paul. The other person is Esther Abaje, a 35-year-old daughter of a priest and a librarian, both Nigerian immigrants. Esther ran on the platform of the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party and won the seat for District 59B in the Minnesota House of Representatives with 17,396 votes. When we spoke to her on Tuesday, she already had a plan of action for the constituency.
Running for office was really just kind of a culmination of the types of public service I've done, and also just seeing that we needed to have decision makers at the table that really understood the struggles of working people, particularly working families, students who have recently graduated, dealing with student debt, and particularly in the housing crisis. Here in Minnesota, even before the pandemic started, we had a housing crisis, and our answer to people if they didn't have enough money for a place to live was they had to be out on the street. So that was something that in my volunteer work, I've been advising tenants who are facing eviction, and that's something that I look forward to working on in the State House should I be elected today.
Yomi Fakparusi and Yinka Faliti both lost their elections. But there's been no word on Paul Akijo in California, Adewumi Kuforiji in Delaware, April Ademiluyi, Ngozi Akubuike, and Benjamin Osemenam in their respective states.
More victory for Africans. This is now the Somali-American Congresswoman from Minnesota, Ilhan Omar, has retained her seat in the U.S. Congress for the Democrats, winning 64.6% of the vote against the 25.9% of her closest contender, Republican Lucy Johnson. While speaking to the media after her victory, Ms. Omar says her success would mean a lot to young men and women. She also says that her opposition to U.S. President Donald Trump would go on if he's re-elected. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has claimed victory in the country's presidential election while vowing to launch a Supreme Court challenge over allegations of fraud in the vote counting. However, millions of votes remain uncounted and no candidate can credibly claim victory at the moment. Over 100 million people cast their ballots in early voting before Election Day on Tuesday, setting the country on course for its highest turnout in a century.
Thus came the tweet claiming a big win and an alleged attempt to steal the election. Then the press conference where incumbent President Donald Trump claims there is a deliberate attempt by a group of people to overturn his victory.
I want to thank the American people for their tremendous support. Millions and millions of people voted for us tonight. And a very sad group of people is trying to disenfranchise that group of people, and we won't stand for it. I want to thank the First Lady, my entire family, and Vice President Pence, Mrs. Pence, for being with us, all through this. And we were getting ready for a big celebration. We were winning everything, and all of a sudden it was just called off.
But for his Democratic rival, Joe Biden, it's not over until it is over.
I'm here to tell you tonight, we believe we're on track to win this election. We knew because of the unprecedented early vote and the mail-in vote that it was going to take a while. We're going to have to be patient until the hard work of tallying the votes is finished. And it ain't over till every vote is counted, every ballot is counted. But we're feeling good. We're feeling good about where we are.
To win the election, each candidate needs at least 270 electoral votes. The eventual winner will lead a nation strained by a pandemic that has killed over 231,000 people and left millions more jobless amid racial tensions and political polarization that only worsened during election campaign.
Still on the U.S. election, the Director General of the Bolitag Research Institute, Professor Bola Akintoyewa, says President Donald Trump is deliberately trying to create confusion in the country's electoral process. The professor of international relations says President Trump foresaw his election defeat, which is why he quickly appointed Judge Amy Barrett to the Supreme Court so that he might have more sympathizers at the court.
Quite well that there cannot be any cure to his defeat. So in this case, it's always better to create a scenario of confusion to enable him to go to court eventually. And he has already prepared for this. That was why he had to, for instance, get the ratification of a new judge in the Supreme Court in such a way that he will have more sympathizers in the Supreme Court in the event the matter is referred to the Supreme Court. And there's no way the matter will not be referred to the Supreme Court. So in this case, in terms of impact, implication, in a situation whereby a Supreme Court will no longer be talking about fairness and justice, but it is already politicized. The foundation has already been laid. So in this case, there's a problem. The second point is that when you decide to announce that you have won, when votes are yet to be counted, that is to let you know quite well that, look, how can you be talking about democracy in this case? The institutional mechanisms required for the announcement of who wins is there. So you cannot on your own declare yourself. So it's looking for a problem. Counter and, order and counter order will always amount to disorder. The voting is another expression, political will of the people, and responding also to the constitutional electoral requirements. But now, when you now provide your own counter order to say you have won, then he's only trying to create, trouble in such a way that an alternative approach will be there, so that they can suspend until final determination by the Supreme Court. So I think he has not done well. He's not providing a good leadership, and he's not sending good messages worldwide.
Let's get more on the U.S. election from our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Maria Bird. Maria, the whole world, everyone is watching, waiting for the announcement of these results. And it's been a long night for you, I'm very sure. What's the latest on the election results in the United States?
Well, good afternoon, and you are exactly correct. It was a very long night. I mean, I think we were into the morning hours and still watching, and many people just took naps like myself and woke up again to see if the results were going to be able to come in. So, we're at a time now where we have about 6 states that are really in the eye of this election. We have Wisconsin, we have Arizona, we have Michigan, we have Nevada. Those states are ones that I think everyone is watching to see what's going to happen, to see if those states are able to provide a pathway to the presidency. At this time, as you mentioned in the report, the Electoral College is really what decides the vote and who the next president will be. And we can see there's pathways for both. There's pathways for Vice President Joe Biden, as right now he's leading in the electoral votes. But if some of those states that I just mentioned go in the direction of Trump could be leading. And so that's why it's just too early to call whether or not this election has been decided. And I think many Americans are continuing to bite their nails and just, they're getting at a point of exhaustion, just not knowing what is going to be next for the fate of the U.S.
Yeah, at this point, anything can happen, right? But earlier, President Donald Trump claimed victory while alleging fraud in the vote counting process. How are Americans reacting to this?
Well, I think Americans aren't surprised. I think we all knew. I mean, we kind of watched this play out all the way up until election. I mean, when President Trump was stating that there was going to be voter fraud, when he was stating that, mail-in ballots would not be legitimate. I mean, so we saw this play out very early on. Now, coming to the day and knowing that early this morning, around 2:30 in the morning, he, released kind of a victory. And then he's now stating that this is fraud. And you're having Republicans actually come out and a bit surprised at his note of fraud and asking for the ballots to stop being counted and calling on the Supreme Court, which can't happen, obviously, until some of the lower courts have to go through a process if we have something like we did in the election of 2000 with a recount. And so that is, that would be the pathway if we didn't. And I can guarantee you that we probably will see some court cases brought forth even after the election is decided. And so we'll be weeks and hopefully not months still looking at this and still talking about the actual result of the election. Now it's projected that if we get some of these key states decisions made and some of the votes come in over the next couple of hours, we should know potentially who would be the next president. The projections will come out pretty strong, but we're in a very interesting time in the U.S.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. So what's the mood like at the moment? Are there fears, perhaps, of some post-election violence if the president loses? I mean, we know that there were some protests yesterday.
Yes. And that is, I think, we've heard that there are individuals that are receiving phone calls telling them to stay home, giving fear tactics. And whether that's coming from the Trump, camp or if those are just Americans that are angry, but there have been, phone calls made to individual homes, kind of trying to scare people not to leave their homes. We've seen, around the Beltway areas in the United States, you'll see many with Trump signs and campaigning and canvassing throughout, kind of in support of President Trump. We've also seen in Washington, D.C., they've seen some Black Lives Matter protesters, and there was a few arrests yesterday evening. And as a result of those protests down at Lafayette Park, which is right in front of the White House. And so we know that things are starting to kind of get a little unsettling, but hopefully we will start to see things even out and people will begin to start thinking about what the future of the U.S. is and figuring out a way to, as a country, come together.
All right, then, Maria, we do hope for a peaceful transition of powers. Exciting times ahead. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you for having me.
In the meantime, President Donald Trump has tweeted that a parade held to show support for him in Nigeria was a great honor. Mr. Trump did not give further details, but a prayer walk organized by Christian evangelical pastor Daddy Ezekiah was held on October 25th in Onitsha City in southeastern Anambra State. The crowd waved American flags and held placards which read, "Make America Great Again," and President Trump, "America needs a man like you." Thanks for staying with us. About 50 people have been arrested in Uganda following dramatic scenes in the capital as opposition politician Bobi Wine was cleared to contest for the presidency in February's elections. After an hours-long standoff, Bobi Wine, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, was forced out of a police van and into his compound. While speaking to his supporters at home, Mr. Kyagulanyi said that the police had pepper-sprayed him and his colleagues.
Aides of opposition leader Bobi Wine say smashing through windows of his vehicle, Ugandan police arrested him. Shortly after he handed in nomination papers for next year's presidential election. Video obtained by Reuters showed the incident in which a spokesman for Wine's National Unity Party said police bundled the singer-turned-politician into a van.
We are not each other's enemies. We know our enemy, we know the enemy of Uganda, and that is Museveni and his regime of national shame. So the more we fight against each other, we are delaying the change that Ugandans so desperately want.
Robert Kyagulanyi, popularly known as Bobi Wine, is seeking to end President Yoweri Museveni's more than a third of a century in power in February's poll. The 38-year-old, born 3 years before Museveni came to power, says his upbringing in a slum near the center of the capital, Kampala, means he understands the needs of ordinary Ugandans. That, alongside the pop star's angry political music, has earned him a large following ahead of the election. Wine was detained near a venue where nominations were being filed with the electoral body. He was then driven in a police van to his compound, which was full of what Wine's camp said were thousands of supporters who had gathered in protest. Since expressing his presidential ambitions, police and security forces have regularly dispersed Wine's rallies and beaten or detained his supporters.
Now, the UN, the African Union and the West African Bloc, ECOWAS, have urged the opposition in Côte d'Ivoire to respect constitutional order after it rejected President Alassane Ouattara's re-election, vowing to set up a transitional government. A joint statement has called on all parties to exercise dialogue and restraint. Earlier, the government accused the opposition of sedition, asking the public prosecutor to bring those involved to justice. Police surrounded the house of the opposition leader, Henri Konan Bédié, firing tear gas at his supporters. However, the opposition accuses President Ouattara of an electoral coup. Two aid relief workers employed by the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, ADRA, along with an unidentified person, have been released by anonymous captors in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The three were returning from the Bolongwe refugee camp in eastern DRC's South Kivu province when they were abducted and held against their will. The group's driver was the fourth person abducted but was released soon after. ADRA says it worked closely with local authorities to communicate with the abductors and remained in touch with family members. Now, after 4 days, all three remaining hostages have been released unharmed and transferred to the hospital for a health evaluation. This is the second reported attack on ADRA workers in the DRC since 2009. Malawi has announced plans to open a full embassy to Israel in Jerusalem, becoming the first African nation to do so in the contested city. In a video statement during a visit to Israel, Malawi's foreign minister called the decision a bold and significant step. The minister congratulated Israel on its budding relations with Arab and Muslim states under U.S. brokered deals, including new ties with the African country Sudan that Israel has held as marking the start of a new era in the region. The embassy is expected to open by the summer of 2021.
Very exciting. This is a really historic visit. In the meeting that we just had, the minister gave me a message from Malawi President Chikawa. The Malawi president said has decided to open an embassy in Israel and establish it in Jerusalem. I will end this with a very appropriate, I think, greeting that Minister Makaka brought with him from Malawi. We say in Hebrew, L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim. We say in English, next year. We hope to meet in Jerusalem.
You also welcomed the decision by His Excellency Dr. Lazarus Chakwera, President of the Republic of Malawi, to open an embassy in Jerusalem and express the gratitude of the people of Israel for this bold and significant step. We did also congratulate you on the historic peace agreement between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, known as the Abraham Accords.
In Kenya, clubs and pubs across the country are set to be shut down again under new COVID-19 measures. This comes as East Africa's largest economy experiences a surge of cases and the death toll surpasses 1,000. Reports say political rallies and large gatherings will also be banned under the new measures yet to be announced. Meanwhile, President Uhuru Kenyatta has called an emergency summit of county governors. Last month, President Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga led huge rallies attended by thousands in various cities to promote controversial constitutional reforms. Libyan athlete Ahmed Abu Zariba is preparing for 2021 Tokyo Olympic Games as he hopes to win next year's African Championship that will earn him a place in Japan. Amid a lack of official support and the coronavirus pandemic, he's still training in his hometown of Misrata.
Libyan weightlifter Ahmed Abu Zariba has spent years braving Libya's raging war, harsh economic conditions, and now a global pandemic, all with one goal: to represent his country in Tokyo's 2021 Olympics. The 20-year-old athlete has battled his way to local and international competitions despite the challenges he's faced since beginning his journey in 2012, just 1 year after the uprising that toppled longtime leader Muammar Gaddafi. 8 years later, with his country still split between two rival administrations, between East and West, and the virus shutting down most training facilities this year, the economics student has put himself through two competitions. Abu Zariba trains at a rundown gym in the coastal city of Misrata and sometimes outdoors on the beach with his friends. With almost no financial support, Zariba has two coaches who volunteer to train him. While on lockdown to curb the spread of coronavirus, Zariba would come alone to the empty sports hall to train, not deterred by the pandemic that has brought the country's healthcare system to its knees. He's won both regional and international championships over the years, and winning one more in Mauritius next March is enough for him to qualify for the Tokyo Olympics.
Well, good luck to him. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale. Bye for now.